Welcome to Stardust Stereo. I'm Parker McPhinney, and I'm your host. Today is the 19th of September, year 2025. This weekend, we have a partial solar eclipse, 29 degrees Virgo and 5 minutes arc. And you know, we have a saying in astrology, eclipses bring shifts and changes to heads of state. Sometimes voluntary, sometimes not, sometimes through misfortune. Shifts happen within a country and leaders step down. We're already seeing that because we're in an eclipse window period. We just had a lunar eclipse, which I did a podcast on 2 weeks ago. And Sunday's partial solar eclipse is very layered. I've just spent hours upon hours researching. This podcast could be 5 hours long, and I wouldn't tell you everything that I discovered. So I try to condense it down because you probably don't want to listen to my voice for 5 hours straight. But these insights that I'm going to share are insights that, yes, how you can use the eclipse personally, and then insights on the global stage of how the eclipse will shift power. Now, in America, the United States of America, we have just gone through a horrendous couple of weeks. The last 10 days have been extremely disturbing to me personally. Not only because I really hate to see men so violent, but I also hate to see evidence of how people on the globe have not grown, very specifically not grown past the ego. There's something very wrong with our young men in this country in that they seem to confuse a bullet with masculinity, and they need to learn how to communicate, and they can. And it's everybody's responsibility to help everybody, men and women, learn how to communicate and not fall in the maya that violence is going to change something. And it certainly does not change in a positive way. It's time to open a new drawer and discover skills within ourselves that we did not know were there, or we've been too lazy to use them, and to be courageous enough to use them. I actually am hesitant to say this, but I'm going to say it anyway. I listened to Charlie Kirk, and I never saw any hatefulness come out of that man's mouth. And I'm sure you could find a word or a sentence out of context or even in context that was spoken in a way that years later he may have regretted. But if I look at the body of his work, I see nothing but an upstanding human being that was incredibly passionate about his faith and was trying to reach others through that. And as a matter of fact, I did see a video of him having a discussion with a trans person, and that man was so gracious and careful and just beautiful in how he handled that interaction. That's why I just don't get this celebrating of his violent death, which was just horrific to me. And my first prediction at looking at these eclipses is, like I said, heads of state are going to change. But one thing I don't think is going to change is the Republicans' stronghold on this country. I think that we are going to see the Republicans sweep the House in November. I think we are going to see a Republican president in 2028, and I think it's going to be Vance, which I actually like, which mortifies a lot of my friends. And I'm sorry, if you cannot tolerate, no, I'm not sorry. This is the problem. The inability to discuss any possibility of people governing that you don't like. And we just have to grow past this infantile teenager reaction that if I don't like your views and the way you are, I'm just going to shut down. I'm not going to look for that spark of life in you. And that's our responsibility as adults. As one of my teachers recently said, you have to purify your heart. You have to get the purest view possible. And we can't if we're playing ping pong back and forth and, oh, you're not on my team. This is not a football game. And if it were, I would just opt out to not play anymore. And then, of course, I'd be berated because I'm not voting. Let's try to find that spark within ourselves to where we can give a little space to listen and share ways that we can unite, because I guarantee you, when you're on your deathbed, you are not going to be thinking about who you voted for. And we've got to teach our young men that violence is not an answer. It's just sad to me beyond belief. Okay, this eclipse, 29 degrees Virgo. The ruling planet is Mercury of that sun and moon. Mercury is in Libra. Mercury is in mutual reception with Venus. Words, thoughts of love. Words, thoughts of progressing forward in ways that are beautiful, finding the beauty. This eclipse clearly indicates to me Queen Bee is gonna take charge. I can think of one woman who's just about to take charge of an organization, and she is going to become a queen bee. Absolutely. 100%. The Sabian symbol, and if you don't know what that means, Google it. The Sabian symbol of this 29-degree Virgo, learning to perfect living via the cosmic ancient manuscript. In the beginning there was Word. It's a sacred text. Well, you don't have to think too hard about that one. We have so many sacred texts, and they all have a core that says the same thing. Using selective analysis with your emotions, that's what this eclipse is about. Being useful, preventing trouble. Do what's useful to create unity. Establish critical thinking. Find the order. Be your own editor. Is this going to help humanity, what I'm about to do? Is it going to help me? Is it going to help humanity? This eclipse deals with civil servants, crops, the health worker, sanitation, mud. It's an earth sign. A couple of days ago, we had heavy rains where I live. All I could think was, oh, the mudslides are coming. It's about earthworks. Solar eclipse represents the importance of water, the healing component of water. Water actually works with the earth, because mud, if it's too much, is bad, but if you use it effectively, consciously, with purpose, you can create domes, earth houses, earthworks. I know somebody that does this for a living, going around the world creating earth domes. The brilliant Nadir Khalili, Iranian-American architect, who created the entire methodology of making domes for people. Actually, he presented a case in California, a template to help solve our homeless crisis. And of course, the powers that be were short-sighted and ignored it. Okay, what else can we gather from this eclipse? Using less, needing less, simplifying. This is a simplifying eclipse. Study herbology, natural medicines. This eclipse is about bees. It's about perfecting something within, perfecting the way to have a pure mind. It represents the brahmacharyan, celibacy, commitment to celibacy. This eclipse also speaks of beauty and ways in which to soften the brittleness within your body, within your mind. The dryness is countered by moisture. We need a revolution of the heart. How are you softening your own heart? I don't know if I said it, but this eclipse occurs in the last degree of Virgo. It will be extremely important for Virgos that are born 28 to 30 degrees, for Pisces of the same, Sag, and Gemini. Or if this eclipse falls in your 1st, 4th, 7th, or 10th house, close to the angle, it's going to affect your entire life. Say you have a Virgo rising at 28 degrees, it would fall right in your 1st house. That's your view of the world, the lenses you carry. Simultaneously, it would activate the 7th house, those that are not you, other business and romantic partners, and it would also activate the 10th house, your standing in the community. Therefore, it would activate the 4th house, your home. So when your view shifts, it changes your relationships in your life. It can sometimes change your desired profession. When the angles are triggered, the entire life goes through a series of fundamental, huge changes. Sometimes these are welcomed, sometimes they are actively pursued, sometimes they come to us through events that happen outside of us that we have no control over. The only thing we can control is our own attitude. This particular solar partial eclipse also is important for people born September 1960 to February 1961. Why? Because it is your prenatal eclipse degree. I'm getting a little deep in that area for people that do not know astrology. So that's for the astrologers, or those that are savvy with astrology. The prenatal eclipse is being triggered for you. It was also triggered the last time we had this eclipse in 2006, September of 2006. So even though every single eclipse is different, completely different, they will have a thread that is repeated or built upon. This eclipse will be activated for 5.5 years, meaning that every time a trigger comes along, a slower moving planet, or sometimes Mars, very often it can be Mars, it can also be Venus. Specifically, Mars is usually used as that trigger point. But other planets can act as a trigger to an eclipse. Now, reminding you that eclipses are new moons with sunglasses on. I've said it before 10,000 times. And they create an energy force. They fall in a particular house. There's 12 of them in your chart. It's going to fall in one of those houses. It's a super strong new moon that says, take a new view. Build in this house. This is the house to pay attention to. And of course, it's very complicated because astrology is extremely complicated. That's why I never get bored with astrology. If the eclipse triggers a planet in your chart that's at 27, 28, 29 degrees, that's going to give you even more information of how to utilize this eclipse. And speaking of triggers, on October 13th, Venus will trigger this solar eclipse. So look toward gains, start building them now. That period will either show gains or letting go, love, marriages, working things out, or it might be discovered that perhaps you need to separate for a little while until you can come to the mature level of understanding each other. People do outgrow each other. This is a fact. And in our day of instant divorce, instant separation, marriages of a long term are very rare. I believe that we are going to see women as heads of state, very much so, in the next 5 years, and specifically with this triggering of the solar eclipse by Venus on October 13th. So some countries that will be affected: Iran, Canada, Australia, specifically Tasmania, New Zealand, big time, the South Pacific Islands, Fiji, Tonga, Samoa. That is where the shadow passes in Australia, New Zealand, and those that I just mentioned. They will see big events. Eclipses are always about the big events. And heads of state changing, structures changing, laws changing, pivotal things where they're bookmarked in your brain. For those savvy of it, this particular eclipse is Saros Series 154. I'm not going in depth at that. That could be like 15 more podcasts. This eclipse for Afghanistan and leadership, very important. In Australia, it's university speech, working and healing. The vax may become an issue there again. In Canada, it also affects their 6th house. In Iran, it's dealing with things that are hidden and money and where monies come. Some discovery there. NASA, 11th house, funding, females come to the front. New York City, whoa. Big unrest can be happening in New York City here in the very near future, specifically in Manhattan. So if you live in New York City, specifically in Manhattan, don't be foolish. Watch your back. Don't be fearful, but don't be irresponsible with your own safety. India is affected by this eclipse. Kids, young men, clashes, wanting women to go to the past, of how things are in the past. That's not going to be happening, men. except in certain parts of the world or in certain communities where women desire it. You cannot force somebody willingly to go backwards if that's their view of it. If they've changed their view and they suddenly want to be a stay-at-home mom, then great. But if it's not their desire, you can't force it. And if it's not a man's desire to go out and be the breadwinner, you can't force that either. Antarctica is affected by this eclipse. The research stations. King Charles keeps popping in my brain. And I don't think I'm the only one, but our president going over there, and oh my goodness, that hat of the First Lady, that is some hat. I'm like, whoa, secret agent hat. Okay, let's talk about fashion. I'll go back to King Charles in 1 second. Fashion, simplified, simple, earth tones, linear, simple, simple, simple. We will see that. Streamline. I saw this documentary, Salvador, Shoemaker of Dreams. It's on Prime. It's so fabulous. Oh my God, it's so fabulous. I loved it. I love shoes. I absolutely love shoes. That documentary showed what a beautiful person this man was. How creative and how thoughtful about women. And he was obsessed with the feet. Okay, I'm going to give you the trigger dates coming up after the one that I mentioned on October 13th. December 13th this year. Then April 8th, 2026. August 9th, 2026. June 13th, 2027. I've got 4 more, but I want to talk about that little cluster. These trigger dates I've just given you are very important to King Charles. And also, in addition to that, his eldest son. King Charles, next week, is very much his chart, and so therefore he is very much activated by the Mars square Pluto that happens next week, which I believe could trigger some announcement. Now, I don't know about you, but seeing President Trump go over there and seeing Prince Harry go over there got my little brain thinking. And so I punched up a million charts. And Prince William's chart has a midheaven of 27 degrees and 30 minutes arc Virgo, which in effect means this solar eclipse activates his 10th house. He will be taking over even more and more of his father's duties. The first time Mars will trigger that point is going to be in December, and then in April, and then in August of 2026. And I believe that the August could be the one that's super important for Prince William and the country of the United Kingdom. We are probably going to see some unexpected rebels here in this country, the USA. Behind the scenes changes. And I think also in our country we could see unexpected shifts of power. And this is based on the chart of the White House. There's been history that was done specifically by the astrologer Celestial, that the White House chart, the cornerstone of the White House, actually is a quite effective prediction point. When that chart is activated, we see shifts actually happen in Washington. So that chart is affected with this eclipse. And that's why I feel like there are emotions happening behind the scenes. So just let me give you a scenario. If one world leader changes, steps down, the whole board game changes. People start grappling for power. Why don't we grapple for love the same way? And I'm not talking about romantic love, even though I have nothing against romantic love. But why don't we grapple for pureness of love like we do for power? Love is so much more full than power. It's unlimited. It takes you higher. Just your normal I'm in control power thing just brings huge responsibility and a lot of jealousy and envy and all that. I mean, of course, people can get jealous of if you have a fantastic partner in love, and there are people that hate people that are full of love, as we have just seen. So regardless, we should develop more love. Take this solar eclipse energy and strengthen what you love and build on it. The sun and moon are opposing Saturn and opposing Neptune in this chart, the solar eclipse chart. And it's a very clear indicator of magical finger of God. There's 3 fingers of God in the chart. They're called yods. And I think that if we come from a place of love and we combine that with using our critical thinking to implement the plan and to lessen the suffering and increase the healing, Mars is opposed Chiron in this chart. So it is clearly a chart that indicates with the right script, and the right script being one that causes no harm and only helps, as my guru used to say, help ever, hurt never. So we have a solar eclipse chart that is screaming to us, help ever, hurt never. So I'm going to stop with that. Just meditate. What is helping and what is hurting, and change your behavior accordingly. Virgo likes to clean, so scrub clean your heart of the impurities. I'm Parker McPhinney. This is Stardust Stereo. I'd like to thank you for listening. I'd like to thank my patrons. You know who you are. And I appreciate you very much. If you would like to become a patron, you can do so at patreon.com/ParkerMcP. And when you become a patron, you also get written word from me that you do not get anywhere else. In other words, it's never made public. And I want to remind you, you are made of stardust. So go shine.